Hi, my name is Colin Scott, and I'm going to be giving my speech on the topic of Brexit. Many of you have heard of Brexit and probably have a base understanding of the topic, but might not know all of the details. Today I'm hoping to inform all of you more on the issue of Brexit, including the economic and financial repercussions for the UK, the European Union, and the world as a whole. I'm credible to speak on this topic because I recently got back from studying abroad, where my classes focused heavily on Brexit, as well as my first-hand experience of traveling to the UK and speaking with British citizens. So, if you are not familiar with Brexit, it is the decision that was made by the United Kingdom to separate from the European Union, which was originally made in June of 2016. This happened when a referendum was held to vote on the issue, and the result of the vote was a 52% vote in favor of leaving. The UK was allowed as much time as they needed to work out the details, with the only clause being that as soon as negotiations for leaving began, they only had 2 years to get out. Theresa May was then elected Prime Minister in July of 2016, and negotiations followed shortly, beginning in March of 2017. This means that the UK only has 9 months remaining in its 2-year period of negotiations, which will end in March of 2019. Brexit originally began for a variety of reasons, but the 3 main reasons were due to economics, sovereignty, and immigration issues. First, economics. Proponents of Brexit argue that the EU was a dysfunctional economic entity. The European Union currently has 28 member countries, including the United Kingdom. This means that if one country is struggling and cannot support itself, or it has a weak economy, the EU will funnel money into it to try and help it out. This often results in the bigger countries with strong economies, such as Germany and the UK, having to pull more weight, which can end up annoying them. The second issue was sovereignty. With a wave of nationalism spreading across the world, every country wants to feel strong and independent and have the ability to make its own decisions. This is no different with the UK. Many British citizens feel as if they do not have enough say in decisions made by the EU for their country. Lastly, an issue that was facing the UK was immigration. Because of the way the European Union is structured, EU citizens are essentially allowed to move freely between any of the 28 member countries, and it is easy to immigrate from one country to another. Britain is a popular destination for many Europeans because of this, especially if the conditions in their home country are not as good. There are 3 big issues that the 2 sides must come to an agreement on before they start to negotiate trade deals. These are the 5-year budget plan, the rights of European citizens, and the issue with Ireland. The 5-year budget plan states that the UK must continue its payments to the European Union budget for 5 years. This is roughly $40 billion and will run through 2020. 40 billion pounds per year, which translates to roughly 52.7 billion US dollars. The second issue is the rights of the current European Union citizens staying in the UK. Britain did not want any non-UK citizens to be able to stay, and they wanted the power to control all immigration once they left the EU. The EU wants all current EU citizens to be able to stay in the UK, as well as a policy that still allows immigration during the transition period. Lastly, the issue with Ireland. Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom, but the Republic of Ireland is not. So Northern Ireland would leave the EU along with Britain, while the Republic of Ireland would remain. Because of this, the UK wants to put a hard border down between Ireland and Northern Ireland. The EU has been very adamant on the fact that there can be no hard border instituted between the two. Now I will briefly state some arguments for Brexit as well as some against it. So one benefit of leaving the European Union is that the UK will no longer have to pay the member fee after 2020. This will still be costly in the short term, but they would have been paying it anyways and will end up saving billions of pounds in the long run. Another benefit, as stated before, is sovereignty. England will regain the ability to control all of its economic, financial, and political courses of action. Rather than a committee representing 28 very different countries deciding trade policies and budget decisions, the UK will be completely independent again. They will also be able to regulate immigration, which many people believe will result in more security for the country. Former Work and Pensions Secretary Ian Duncan Smith, who was in favor of Brexit, said, We are leaving the door open to terrorist attacks by remaining in the EU. This open border does not allow us to check and control people, he said. According to the Office of National Statistics, there are roughly 4.7 million immigrant workers working in the UK. Another benefit will be trade. The UK will now be able to purchase cheaper goods around the world rather than being forced to buy from inside the European Union. They will be able to create individual deals with other countries, whereas before they would have been a part of a deal that included the EU as a whole with individual countries. They will also still most likely be able to negotiate a favorable trade deal with the European Union as well because they rely on Britain so much for trade. A few arguments against Brexit are that they must fulfill the financial obligations to the European Union until 2020. This will be a hit of about £40 billion per year, and they will be getting nothing in return from the EU. Additionally, all current EU citizens living in Britain will be allowed to remain, and as discussed before, there cannot be a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, which is the most controversial point. This is poor for the national security of the UK because people would be able to travel to Ireland and essentially just walk right into the UK via Northern Ireland. Another argument against Brexit is that Britain has a weak negotiating position. They have been very aggressive in negotiations and want to retain all of their trade benefits of being in the EU without contributing to it or abiding by its rules. In response, the EU has threatened to restrict airport access to UK planes, amongst other things. Many economists also believe that in the long run, the economic growth of the UK will decrease by 2 to 8% over the next 15 years if they do leave the European Union. So, what has happened since that initial vote in June 2016? David Cameron resigned and Theresa May took over as Prime Minister. There have been many unsuccessful trade talks, and there haven't been any dramatic economic effects yet. In February of this year, the UK ruled out a customs union with the European Union. According to whaUKthinks.org, if there was a second referendum vote right now, 51% of British citizens, of UK citizens, would vote to remain in the EU. Additionally, 49% of people believe that Brexit will have a negative impact on the economy of the UK, while only 36% of people feel that it will be positive. In conclusion, the issue of Brexit is much more complicated than simply one country leaving a larger union. It will impact all of Europe and all of the world as a whole. We are uncertain the effects at the moment, as trade and negotiation talks are ongoing, and the only thing that is certain right now is that the UK will leave the European Union on March 29th, 2019.